It's the top of the hour, so we want to go ahead and get started to be respectful of everyone's time. So thanks so much so far for the conversation in the chat. It's great to see that you're joining in from all across the country. So welcome to today's session. We're here to help you make the transition to online teaching during this health crisis. This session is designed to offer help and best practices to both current users of WebAssign who are teaching face-to-face, as well as new users of WebAssign who are adapting to using an online platform maybe for the first time. Therefore, stick with us as we have some basic instructions as well as advanced to help everyone learn about solutions specific to your situation and needs and WebAssign experience. So you know, we do expect this session to take about 90 minutes. So please kind of stick around for that long, and if you can't, we will be posting this webinar afterwards on some places where we'll show you where to find it. So be confident you can access all of this information. So my name is Jennifer Fink, and I'm the Senior Marketing Director for Math and Statistics and WebAssign here at Cengage. Joining me today and doing most of the sharing will be Mike Lafreniere, one of our WebAssign faculty partners, a very experienced WebAssign user, and he also is teaching at Ohio University. In addition, we have Mark Santique, our product director for WebAssign, and Andy True, our product manager for statistics and also a WebAssign expert. In our chat, we also have a number of our team members ready and standing by to help answer questions. In addition, at the top, you might have seen Mark Clark say hello. He's one of our authors and also an expert in teaching online. So look for tips and answers to your questions in the chat throughout. So before we get started, I do want to make sure that everybody understands the Cengage response to support our higher ed community. If you and your campus has been impacted either temporarily or for the rest of the term, Cengage has opened up Cengage Unlimited access to your students free of charge for the remainder of the semester. This includes free access to all of our ebooks and online learning platforms, including WebAssign, SAM, CNow V2, All V2, and MindTap. You and your colleagues can also ask for any help you need in order to get your course running or to adapt your current course to any changing schedules or needs. Before we get started, I do want to share with you some of the resources that we have on hand for you to access right now. We have a COVID-19 support page, as well as a WebAssign specific blog series with tips and tricks specific to WebAssign to get you started. And I'm just going to give you a brief walkthrough so you can know what resources are available to you on these websites. So on our COVID-19 support page, you're going to find resources for faculty, students, and institutions. Under the resources for faculty, there's a wealth of content already posted to help you. A couple things that I do want to highlight. First, there's some self-service access instructions here. There's also some events in addition to this one that you can join. And what those are one, we have these office hours by our faculty partners. So if you want to talk one-on-one with another instructor using WebAssign, we have several office hours available to you, including one today at 4 Eastern, and then next week, every day from 11 to and 4 p.m. And they're set up for an hour each, so please join in that hour time frame. And you can register simply by clicking on the appropriate link. In addition, we have a wonderful recording of a webinar that we did last Friday, and this was just going online general best practices teaching tips. And this is a great resource if you're having questions about resources to record your lecture online, how to communicate with students, how to engage students, lots of just general best practices for you to check out. Next, I want to also let you know that you can request one-on-one help simply by going to the Let's Connect button. And what that will do is take you to this page where you can find course materials if you're still searching for any online available course materials, as well as this Get Started. And what that will do is provide you a form that you can complete and let us know exactly what you need for someone to follow up with you as quickly as possible. And then lastly, I do want to let you know with the WebAssign specific blog series, we do have all of these topical blogs that will basically include most of the resources, if not all of them, that we're going to be showing you today. You're just going to find it in a different form on our blog series. So you can see we have a wealth of different topics that can help you address your specific needs. In addition, we're going to be posting a blog that will include a link to today's webinar on here as well. It will also be posted on the COVID-19 page. But if there's any additional resources that we're covering today that are not included in a blog, we're going to include it in that blog for this particular webinar so that you know that you can access information after today. So continuing on, I just want to remind you, current users and any new users, that we do have a wonderful resource for you already in place. If you have any questions for how to do something specific within WebAssign, simply go to this help tab when you're logged into WebAssign. There's step-by-step tutorials on basically everything in WebAssign. This is where I go when I have a question. And this is where many of our other team members go as well, because everything is housed in here and very easy to follow. And we also have it available for students on the student side. In addition, lastly, before we really dive into WebAssign, tip for today's webinar, please ask your questions in the chat. We are going to be trying to answer as many questions in real time as possible. We have a number of people out there ready to answer questions. And just please remember to check mark all panelists and attendees before entering your question so that others can learn from your question. In addition, if you have any tips or tricks or things that you feel would be beneficial to your peers on the call today, please feel free to share those as well. We'll be reviewing the chat afterwards and trying to share some of those in the blog post as well. So this is definitely a sharing event and a place for you to get answers to your questions. And we really hope it's helpful for you as you navigate the days ahead. So with that, I would like to just share with you briefly what our today's topics are: removing instruction online, how to test online, and how to encourage student interaction. And we really focused in on these topics because this is what we've heard from you and other customers, that this is what information they're seeking right at this very moment. So if you need any additional help beyond what you see here today, just know that we here at Cengage are here to support you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Lafreniere, our faculty partner and WebAssign expert, to walk you through how to do many of these things.
All right, well, thank you, Jennifer. Welcome, everyone. Make a segue over to my screen, and hopefully it's sharing accordingly for all to see. I'm going to be demonstrating with you many of the items that are listed on this agenda. So before I do, though, I want to lay some foundational expectations and how we'll go about starting off this process, some general tips in terms of where you can find support. Each one of us around the country has access to what you may have known previously as a learning consultant. These account executives have been charged with giving you the support you need in terms of finding the right textbook, questions, and resources to put your course into a remote mode online for students to access. So be sure to reach out to those individuals that are there within your area to help you with those details. Try to avoid the overwhelming nature of what we're about to present today. Try to avoid doing it all at once. Fortunately, a lot of what we're going to share with you has been culminated from years of use and practice. So these are the items that have worked, and so they can be rolled out to you with quicker access than maybe developing yourself. Make sure as you try to limit the everything at once approach, try to prioritize what really matters. And I would assume that centers on giving your students access to the reading materials, the assignments you want them to complete, and ultimately, as we end our time today, talking about online assessments that could be of a heightened level of rigor, such as exams or tests. In all, I wouldn't strive for perfection. I would keep the mindset in terms of what's reasonable in this shortened amount of time that we have to prepare, and try to get the functionality and the rigor out where you can, and then certainly reach out to colleagues, to myself and your account executive, to support you along the way. All that said, I'm going to transition over to WebAssign now to give us some insight into how we can go about those items on the list. We're going to start out with some basics to get everybody a baseline of opportunity to create their course in WebAssign. I've got quite a few available already on the screen for us to move about, whether it's calculus, pre-calculus, college algebra, you can name the range. Physics, engineering, I happen to favor and teach as well in WebAssign. Quite a range of possibilities. We're going to start by creating a course. Many of us will have a need to go into these basics. And as we go through this next hour and a half, we're going to be elevating the rigor. And at the end, I think you'll find quite a few advantageous advanced features that we'll highlight with regards to your need to put your content online and for remote learning. So in this approach to creating a course, in the top left corner of WebAssign, you'll notice this create feature. And it's here you get a really good insight as to how WebAssign is structured. It's really a hierarchy centered around the question. The question is what's going to be assessed, automatically graded, if you will, and we collate that into the form of an assignment. That assignment can actually be of any type we want. We can give it whatever name we want. We can call it homework, a lab, a test, an exam. Thankfully, within that assignment, we have the ability to change the settings so that it can take on that feel to a student that it's an exam without the support resources you might typically find in a homework. All that said, you have the ability to take all those assignments and package them into a module, or what we would call a course in WebAssign, to share with your students using what I recommend easily is known as a class key. That way students can self-enroll and get into your course materials sooner than not. So those are the items. We're going to start with the clicking of the course item. So as you go back over this recording later, you'll have at least a reference to create such an item. You have a couple of options. And if your colleagues are willing to share entire course shells, and I just mentioned that just for the sake to know that it's possible, you could indeed copy a set of assignments, exams, assessments, and put them into your course. So reach out to your learning consultant or in the chat for that type of information. We're going to start with the basics of creating a new course, and we're going to build on this throughout our time together today to give us an overview of what it takes. So we're going to create a calc course, and we're not going to get too extravagant in the naming of conventions. You can give it whatever you want in terms of numbers. There's a lot of possibilities here. We're going to give it a demo for the sake of expediency. And then I recommend strongly you go through the self-enroll feature. I let the class key feature by default work itself out, and then choose the appropriate term and duration that you're seeking in terms of time. Given the free access with Cengage Unlimited, you've got a lot of possibilities here to open up your course, not only to the conclusion of the semester, but maybe you have students who might seek an incomplete and need additional more time. That possibility of extending that date out is quite real. So I'm going to leave this rather flexible because I'm going to package all my sections into one course, and I'm going to go find a math book, soft physics, and I'm going to look for calculus. And I can choose to find it by author if I want. I tend to favor Stewart and Larson. Those are two of my go-tos in this particular category of mathematics. And I can scroll through the range of textbooks that are possible. I'm centering in on this one that gives me an idea. There are hyperlinks that allow you to dig deeper into this book to see what it offers. It'll open up in separate pages. But basically, you just want to click in this space right here where I've circled in red this rectangular shape. When you do that, it commits you to selecting that textbook. And by doing that, you now have that part of your course. The good news is you could change it. You could trash this, start over if you make a mistake in your selection, and continue about making a new course. The process of finalizing this course creation is a matter of certifying. Yes, you could go looking for more additional content, but for the sake of expediency, we want to create a course rather quickly. So within a minute or so, we were able to create a course available for us to build content. And so there are three ways that we can add assignments to this course. This course will first open up into the schedule mode that we're about to see, allowing us to take advantage of course packs, assignments we may wish to create on our own, or for that matter, you may borrow assignments from your colleagues or that which is found through the search capabilities of WebAssign. So there's quite a bit there to pull from. Notice I created a rather short course of just 2 weeks. You can certainly extend this out to whatever duration you'd like. The possibility of that exists back in the class view. We'll end on that in just a bit. Inside of this mode, we can go about taking assignments that are part of our library. You can see I have quite a few over to the far side of the screen. Assignments are uniquely identified by an assignment ID. And so those assignment ID numbers are going to be the unique numbers that allow us to put assignments into our course. It's a matter of just dragging an assignment we find favor with, dropping it into the schedule tool, and repeating this process for a base of assignments that we wish to share with our students. As you go about this process, there are going to be 3 main dates to consider as a basic setting for placing an assignment in your course. The 3 main items are the due date, the availability, and the view until date. And frankly, what you mainly need is just the due date. That's usually the minimum number setting that would be required for students to gain access. Keep in mind your time zones. If you've got students who have left your part of the country to return home, there's going to be a time zone relative to the institution and where you log in. You click schedule, and that assignment now has made its place in the appropriate week into which you dragged it. So we can continue this process if you want, which I tend to favor, dragging in more assignments, and they will inherit those scheduled settings of this particular week and date and time that it's due. You'll notice it'll pre-populate here in just a moment, giving me the freedom to not have to type this over and over again. So it picks up what you last entered. And I tend to drag my assignments over one after the other and then schedule and change them a little later to the details that I need. So I tend to just load them up here. So that's the scheduler tool. If we go into the class view to take a look at how this class is taking shape in WebAssign, if you went through the process of adding many assignments, which you can return to and add more, you'll notice those same 2 assignments now have made their way into our course. Another option you have is to certainly add assignments based on course packs. So if you want to go back in and continue to add assignments, there's a couple of pathways to that ability, choosing class schedule, as we do here, or scheduling a particular assignment. And it's here you're going to see me highlight a rather advantageous resource with each book known as course packs, a set of pre-designed assignments, in many cases quizzes, pre-lecture materials, even exams, and helpful items that you can place in WebAssign to get your course up and running. Keep in mind, these course packs are highly editable. You can change them in ways that meet your needs. So the big question of the day is, where are these course packs? You might see them on my assignment page listed here in the scheduler, but how do you as a new user bring these into your account? As you have a single account, you can add as many course packs as you like, but frankly, it's best to hone in on just the ones you need for the sake of clarity and access. We click on this link for course packs, and we bring ourselves to just that feature. So let me rewind here and show that again. I'm going to cancel out just ever so briefly. And what we're going to do is show exactly where you get to these course packs on the screen. The course pack feature, I want to highlight just one more time, that subtlety of what we're accessing in terms of resources. These will vary based on the textbook, the content, aligned with the author's pedagogy and what would be a timely, relevant set of assignments for you to complete. So as we go into this blue drop-down list icon, you'll see that option for course packs, and that's what you select to choose to add these to your user account. So this is another way to add assignments to your account. These course packs can sometimes come as a singular long list of assignments, or in this instance with Calculus for Stewart, you're seeing the 4 course packs that you can move through. If you're teaching Calc 3, I would suspect you'd find that course pack number 4 might meet your needs as to where it picks up in the flow of the content in this course. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to add this course pack to my account. You can see it down here as an option. This is what I'm going to get as a result. I'm getting a whole host of pre-lecture materials and quizzes and review items. If you so choose, want to actually preview them, a possibility exists for you to click on them and get a glimpse of what this assignment may entail. You're getting a glimpse of the randomization features of WebAssign and the open-ended questions, the nature at which they operate, and the graphing that goes along with them. And so you can have confidence that this is likely something that's going to meet your needs. As you go through this confirmation process of adding course packs, you get the confirmation dialog box that shows the process unfolding, where you're going to get 180 assignments that happen to match different structures, whether they're pre-lecture with very low stakes and ample opportunity for students to submit, or whether they're higher rigor level items such as quizzes that come with maybe 1 or 2 attempts for students to get it right. We're going to go back to the class schedule, and that list, that course pack, now shows up to the left in the form of a yellow accordion collapsible list of assignments. So as my course packs load, you're noticing a little delay because I have so many I've chosen to take access to in my account, hence the desire to focus on just what you need. But what you'll see here is that gives me the ability to drag and drop those assignments that'll be showing up here in the course packs over to my list of assignments for my students to engage in. So let's take a look. We can go down the list here. We can see by author, the list is available for us to sort through all the different possibilities that are on the screen. I better scroll down so you can see everything. And then we get down to Stewart. There you go, early transcendentals. We've got some possibilities with chapter 10 that I highlighted earlier, and I could just drag that assignment right inside for the others to be listed. Now, another option that exists for you in terms of assignments is to create your own. If you wanted to, you can go up to create your own assignment option. So that possibility exists much like the course. And when you click your own and create your own assignment, you have the ability, now that you have a course, to add questions. So sample assignment is the name of this. I'm not going to use the settings just yet. I'm going to let this become a homework assignment. So the settings I'm going to leave for just now for this introductory as just acceptable. And then I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to use this feature of assignment content that allows me to add the questions. This is your test bank. This is where you get access to the test materials, the assignment materials. This is the question set that would help you construct an assignment for homework, tests, or quizzes. So we click on this, it opens up in its own separate browser window to queue up the selection of questions you might want to add. Notice the staggering nature of the windows that the browser is providing. As we scroll through the many books that I'm using, I can find the one that interests me on calculus, early transcendentals. I happen to have more, and I can locate the chapter on chapter 10 on parametric equations, and begin the scrutiny of questions that I want to add to this assignment. I can choose to add these assignment questions and queue them up for final committal to my assignment. I'll pick the first one, and then I'll pick this second one just for ease of demonstration. You'll notice some come with randomizations. You're welcome to try them out before you commit to their selection. And then when it's all said and done, you're pleased with your selection, you want to commit this queue of questions that we've created by updating it back to the assignment. So this browser button window will close after clicking on this button, and we can see the 2 questions I've selected have now been made part of this assignment for us to save. So that's it to creating an assignment. Now there are other assignments out there, thousands of them, that exist for you to take advantage of, publicly available. If you wanted to, I have one that's popular with a lot of colleagues of mine, dealing with having students show their work in this time of need. So I have a Dropbox assignment that's simply just that. You can duplicate it and use it as you wish. It has a certain assignment ID number that you can pick up right now with a screenshot or look back through the recording. And with it, you can go to this assignment. Notice it's selected as assignment. You can go to it and it'll then bring up my assignment. In this mode of public accessibility, you can actually duplicate this assignment and put it into your own course. That's how we can share amongst each other as colleagues. We can take these assignment IDs and put them to use in any number of our courses, especially as those of you that have rather impressive self-created resources that you'd like to share with your colleagues. When you choose the duplicate button to make this assignment yours, because you're not going to be able to change the one I create, you can choose this. You see the indication you've duplicated, you commit it to saving, and now that assignment is a part of your account. You've just now saved it for your own uses in any number of classes you might want. And so you can preview it. You can start to see if it's worth your needs. I've got this Dropbox file question here that students can upload their work and get credit for that activity, and I can actually see that they're being held accountable for submitting their work. So there's one final option when it comes to adding assignments to your course. In terms of the course itself, there are a number of resources that exist for you to take advantage of adjusting your course. Let's go ahead and take a look at that course we just created. We've got math. Let's see here. Hopefully this is it. There it is. And so a couple of options. If you want to extend your course period of time, you have the ability to do so under Edit Class Settings. If you need more time, your students are needing an incomplete, you can go into the Edit Class Settings and extend this out into the future and allow them to continue to work and extend each individual student the assignment access you want to deem appropriate. So that's one other option I wanted to highlight. Another option, you may want to turn off the randomization features that show the questions in red. Another worthwhile item to point out at this stage. If we go back to class view, this is what I go to almost 99% of the time when I'm working in my courses. I take a look at this class view. I'm able to then take advantage of scheduling powerful features known as reschedule and reorder. All subtly listed at the top in those gray buttons, they offer and lend themselves to a great deal of power. And so the possibility for you to go in and schedule, turn assignments on and off, adjust the dates with batch clarity, you'll see here it's really worth the possibility of exploring this rescheduler tool because it opens up to a lot of efficient ways to reset dates rather quickly across a variety of assignments. So last but not least in the scheduling item or the class view item is the ability to look at resources. In terms of resources, another gray tab here exists allowing you to highlight what you want your students to gain access to. So under the resources tab, it comes with each book a number of PowerPoint, sometimes test banks for printout or distribution by PDF, items such as videos that are ideal for the online environment. You can choose through a selection of checkboxes which items you want your students to see based on what you cover in your course. These will be located in the student view under the resources tab. You also have the ability to add your own resources. The add button allows you to add handouts and other items. Where do all these end up? In the student view, as I make my way over to the student view, the resources are going to be available at the very base of a long list of assignments you might be giving your students. As you can see here, I've got quite a few. And so there's an option, let me go ahead and switch over, to go through that item with regards to, let me find it here. Here we go. We can go to that student view. I got a different one I got to open up and see at the very bottom the resources tab that allows the student to see what you selected and made true. So these items would be made available for the student to open up and gain access to. So here we're downloading a PowerPoint file that was something I wanted my students to have. If I wanted to get that outline to them, or if I want them to view a video, you can see the resources will open up to a wide range of videos in these resources for students to access. So there's a great deal under that resources tab that students can gain access to in this remote learning environment. So that's where I wanted to give you some of the resource materials. I'm checking time just to get an idea of where I need to be. I'm doing pretty good from what my indicators tell me. I'll welcome any interruption, Jennifer, if I'm a little needing to adjust. But what I have on my agenda item next, after enabling resources, is the ebook. Your students will need, I suspect, to read the content that supports their learning. And in the ebook, you have the ebook to take advantage of additional resources. Many of you might resort to presenting in this manner of Zoom or Teams or some other online meeting tool, and showing the ebook and writing on it like I'm doing now can give a great effect to your students understanding the mathematics or material you're trying to present. The ebook is also available through their cell phones, and it can be downloaded and offline on their cell phones through a Cengage MindTap Reader app. So it is possible to take this offline. As I go into this e-reader, I do want to put emphasis on a couple of items on this page. The e-reader has access at the very top of all the media that you might find in this particular book usage. So we click on this, you can see it's correlated by the topic and section that you're into. So 2.8 has what are known as explorits or animations for you to take advantage of. As you scroll through, you might find a list of other resources that are available, like we see here in 3.7, devoted to additional items such as videos. These items can really help explain the student learning concepts that are associated with these chapters and materials. So all of these can be accessible by each student in the course. If you want to, of course, you can go right to the material itself, chapter, and seek out what you're hoping to highlight. The book is flowing in a topical arrangement, but yes, there is still recognition to pagination. You can see how videos and other elements of interactivity are embedded in the ebook. But you do have the ability to go through pagination. I have all my books home right now for this period of time. And if I want to go to page 189, I can just type in that page reference and allow myself to electronically make my way to the MindTap Reader location for page 189. So that gives you, I think, a fair amount of fidelity that aligns to what is going on in your print copy to what happens in the ebook. The reason I chose this page number is also give you a glimpse of how the problem sets are encompassed. They no longer have the answers in the so-called back of the book phase. They're actually right there for the students to expand. And of course, they're just the odd numbered answers so that students can get some feedback into their thinking and checking their work. Last but not least, how do you get your course out there as you try to make sure students gain access to it? It turns out there is an item here known as class key settings. So in the class key settings, you have the ability to share a code for students to access your course. In these times, I recommend this approach, even though there are other options with regards to LMS and Canvas and Blackboard. So what I'm pointing out to you here is if you wanted to join my class, you could actually go with this class key and find this class. I could turn off self-enrollment after a period of time, but I can leave this course key up for students. I can email this to them with a few instructions, and then the instructions would entail simply going to a browser. Let's open up a browser here. And I'm going to go ahead and open up our website just to demonstrate what this would look like from the student view, so you can get a feel of what that entails for your students. So here you go. They would go to a website. I recommend WebAssign.com or WebAssign.net. Just it's a little bit of a bypass in this state of crisis. And so you go to WebAssign.com or .net is what I tend to favor from the old days. And so this will be the website. And they'll be able to enter their class key in this location on the screen. So as they make their way to this class key, they can paste that course key that you've provided them in the form of an email. You can send this out to them to peruse and enter. Then they choose to enroll in this course. They'll get confirmation of which course this is associated with. There's the demo course we made today, and they can confirm it's their class so that they can then add their credentials by logging in either with an existing Cengage account or they can create one of their own. And of course, if they have any need for information, there's a number of links here that they can use to reconcile that. Keep in mind, you have account executives, learning consultant folks that are expertise in this, that are willing to step up and help you through this process, and possibly could conduct virtual seminars and other ways to help your students en masse make their way into your course. So that's what the student view looks like. I want to check on time. I tried to go hastily through this. I have one more item on my list that was in our agenda that I passed just for the sake of time. And if it's all right, I'm going to add that now back into our conversation since I have a few more minutes. So an item that's popular with faculty is one that deals with adding resources that go beyond the textbook and the assignments that you might find in the course packs. So it's possible as you start to peruse the list that I have of demonstrated assignments where just about anything can be added to your course in terms of videos and exercises, activities. So there's a lot here to consider. But the one I want to emphasize is the ability to place in your assignments YouTube videos, a popular choice if you make your own or find colleagues who've put them out there for your use. It's possible to take WebAssign a bit further and place these resources inside of your assignments where it's convenient for students to access them. Here you're witnessing an assignment that has not only a video in the instructions section of WebAssign, but it also can be set up in such a way that they can put a video right inside of the assignment and confirm their viewing of this assignment with a check of the box. And there are other ways to add problems in support of such videos so that students have a compilation of activity to support that video. How you go about doing this is just a matter of taking content from YouTube, whether it's shared code or a link for that matter, and placing that item inside of your instructions. So when we look at this from the assignment side, what you'll see is a series of codes that have been borrowed from YouTube. YouTube provides the sharing tab of every video, and that gives us a great deal of latitude with respect to copyright and public availability of these videos. You want to make sure that you embed the kind of items that have been recognized for that purpose of being shared and viewed by all. And so here you're seeing the code from YouTube that I've embedded for my students to take advantage of. So you can place that inside the instructions portion of the screen of each and every assignment that you want video to be made available. Another option that exists is to take it a little further in advanced form, and you can put these videos that are from Cengage right inside your resources. Those links that you saw in the resources tab can be embedded at the top of your instructions section for students to have to go through and read and watch, if you will, before confirming their completion of this activity. So the idea here is that they are given at minimal a confirmation, academic integrity here. And this does play into what you'll hear Andy True talk about with regards to having students acknowledge the need for academic integrity. This discouragement of potentially bypassing this and just claiming they've watched videos when they didn't. There's a lot here to consider. You can see these open up rather nicely for students to peruse and get access to the materials that would help them learn the material. So that's where I want to draw a conclusion, if I may, Jennifer, or open up the floor to any questions if time permits as we go on to our next topic. I'm going to switch over to just one slide here in preparation, but I'm open to any questions. So I'm going to segue this over to Mark Santee on content support. He'll take over this slide as we transition to a next round of topics.
Hey everybody, we just want to have a quick moment to let you guys know about our support teams. So we do have a content support team. Their email is on the screen now. They are based in our Raleigh general area. All of them are subject matter experts, and we like to use them for when you have questions about how specific assignments are grading, specific questions are grading. If you're writing your own content, be it a math type question or even a simpler question, they can help answer any questions you might have. They can look at how you're grading your own content and how you're presenting it to faculty or other students. And they can also help you share content with each other. So this is an excellent resource. They're all on standby and they're all available. So if you have questions on how things are grading or how you can write your own content, make sure to reach out directly to WebAssign Content Support at cengage.com. They're a special brand of our technical support team, and they're here to help. So if you have questions on anything related to content, that's the team you should reach out to. If you have questions related on a technical side, technical support is also available, and we have that information coming up later in this program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer again.
So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mike. We've had a couple of questions in the chat I see about embedding videos. If we could do that again. I know that's a little bit more complicated process, Mike, and we're a little bit running ahead of schedule. So I'm wondering if we would just want to backtrack and show how to do that. And just so you know, what we're going to be doing is sharing some question templates where you can just put in the direct link. So if you want to create your own content, we're going to be providing those templates, and you'll find them in the blog post on the community after we post it today. So we're hoping to post that community post by the end of the day today. Over to you, Mike, if you want to kind of re-show how to embed the videos.
Certainly. So what I'm going to do is gain access to YouTube. I'm going to use that as the go-to for just demonstrating this sharing of videos. And so what I have on the screen here is a YouTube account. I'm going to I have no accountability for what's showing on the screen right now. Let me see here, switch account, we're good. And so what we do is in YouTube, you have the ability to create a free account. I've been using one for years. And what I'm doing is I'm using the YouTube studio that comes with this account. So I'm going to zoom in on this top corner. So as you have a YouTube account you've been using to view, you can actually enable the studio aspects of it so that you can compile your own videos and share them with colleagues. You can hide them, so to speak, from visible public viewing. And there's two main areas that I want to highlight that are worth pointing out as you start to save your own videos: content and playlists. I favor playlists when it comes to my videos because it helps me embed once and add as much content to my web assignments as I need. So in the content area, you're getting a glimpse of all these different types of videos that I've been making over the years. And so you can share these. There's a shareable link. You can certainly go in and view these on YouTube. And that brings me to where I want to kind of set the stage. Anytime you're viewing a video of this YouTube variety, you can certainly go into the share button to gather the code that lets you place it into your assignment. So the share code is what's key. I prefer to embed my videos for students to see their accessed with a fair amount of ease. So as I click on the share code, that share button allows me to then take advantage of two options, to either embed or to simply copy a link. I prefer the embed option in YouTube. This is freely available. You can do this right now. As you bring this up, you'll get this option over to the far side that all this code allows you to take advantage of. The benefit of this share code also is that you can start a long video at a particular point and highlight exactly where your students need to begin. Maybe at the 1 minute mark is what you're hoping for in terms of their experience of this video. So you can choose this kind of content. You'll notice it has a start point now of 60 seconds. And so we can copy this video content, this embedded code. We can take it and we can go back to our assignment. So in WebAssign, you have all these assignments that we can place a video in over and over again. If I want to, I'm going into this embed YouTube video. I'm going to edit the assignment. So inside of the assignment, you either click on the edit feature or its title. Either one will take you to the edit capability. And as we venture into this assignment, I argue you should scroll down the screen into the instructions sections where I found it to be most advantageous. Notice I've got some code there from an earlier video. I'm going to replace that. You'll typically encounter this instruction box empty, and it's here that I can take advantage of simply pasting that code that I borrowed just a moment ago that is supposed to start at the 60-second mark. So you can see here, this looks just like the code I borrowed from that website on YouTube. When I do this, what happens now, as I save this video and link and information in this assignment, I am now able to take advantage of that video at the top of this assignment in the instructions section. So you'll notice there's that Mayan, or no, this was Chinese numbers for a elementary mathematics course for pre-service teachers. They now have this video inside for them to view. They can play it right inside of their assignment as the questions below are available to answer. So you'll notice this video will hopefully play along and help me out here, but you get the idea of how hopefully you can embed and fast forward. They can even go to YouTube, and there's a lot of functionality here that's maintained in this embedding of videos. Now, how do you make videos? That's a whole nother story. You can use certain tools out there. Screencast-O-Matic comes to mind, that's freely available. But to make videos and capture your screen, those are quite popular. And then to do the things that I'm doing with writing on the screen, I'll do an advocate that folks ask me this quite often, but I use this inking tool that I purchased myself for my own personal use that has been quite the advantageous annotation tool that I use to share and point and highlight what's going on in my videos when doing Zoom sessions or making my own videos. You may also know my cursor is quite large. I would recommend that adjustment when making videos as well. So that's how you add videos to your assignments. Any further elaboration on that needed, Jennifer?
I think we're good. Let me see. I haven't seen anything more in the chat.
And we did. I did post the assignment IDs that Mike was just showing, so you can take a look at how that code's written, duplicate the assignment yourself, and then make it your own, just so you don't have to go through the process of entering in all that code. So it's in the chat, and we'll send that out with the recording when it's done.
There is a question about how many videos can you add. Oh, so I see we can add as many videos as you like. So that's great. Thank you for going over that, Mike.
Thank you for the question. Thank you.
So next, we're going to kind of go swap back to the slide deck. So next we're going to transition to testing online. This has actually been the most popular blog in our blog series, so we know this is an area of high interest to faculty out there. So if it's an interest to you, we're really going to be focusing on the testing and quizzing templates, how to enable show my work, and some of the, the benefits and maybe not so great benefits about how you would want to enable that, and using testing restrictions, using reports, exporting results. As we were sharing in the chat, we are recommending that you are not using a non-LMS integrated WebAssign course right now, and you can export the results, put it into your LMS, and then also Andy will be going through some tips to promote academic honesty. So back over to you, Mike.
All right, thank you, Jennifer, so much. Thanks, everyone. As we go through this, we're looking at a series of options when it comes to testing online that I want to highlight. So I'm going to demonstrate these items by switching over to the WebAssign environment and go through this idea of how can we possibly use these assignments that we've created, possibly with the intent of having them exist for purposes of homeworks, this course that we've created, and turn them into assignments that can be worthy of testing purposes. So testing or quizzing, I'm categorizing in terms of what is appropriate for both students as well as faculty to distribute. And so what we're seeing here is inside these assignments, as they were initially borrowed from online as homeworks, we can alter their interaction and make them, even though the content's already set, we can make them quizzes or tests. So how we do that is by going into the assignment for editing purposes. You want to click on the assignment and approach the assignment editor. So as I go back to highlight this, you'll notice the item on the screen here. I either choose the title of the assignment or I click on the edit button. Either one of these will take you into this assignment editor that gives you the control over how this assignment might behave when students encounter it. At the top of this setting, assignment editor, is the settings section. This is where you're going to find up to, actually exactly 10 different settings that you can choose to convey for this assignment. The content is down below. So you get to choose the content and how it's portrayed to the students, the types of questions and items such as pooling and the videos that you may want to turn on or off depending on what type of assignment it is. Notice there are templates. There are many different templates here that you can take advantage of, and you can actually make your own. There are options to save these templates. As I scroll through, there's a testing template if we want to switch to it. And there are ways to edit and create your own so that you can apply templates to various assignments with great haste. Now, inside of this settings, notice it's rather small here in terms of the gap between assignment settings and content. As I click and check out and want to change these settings to instill the rigor of testing, I'm going to see this expand along the page here. So you notice it's actually taken a great leap of expansion here. As we scroll down under these assignment settings, I'm going to make my way down and we'll see the 10 different settings that are available to you on the screen. I'm going to just zoom out just ever so slightly here so you can see them all at once. And so what we have on the screen are 10 assignment settings. And we'll go through these. The gradebook allows you to allocate how this assignment will appear and used in the calculations of the gradebook. There are 2 of these that are highlighted together. I argue that these are closely connected and should be viewed as such. The submissions you give to students, such as 1, 2, or 3 or more submissions, and whether or not you show work, allow them to show and submit their work, that's under the submissions and work. The randomization, it depends on how many submissions you give that drives the randomizations. There's another one here called assignment display that allows you to choose whether you roll questions out one at a time or in mass as a single file list. Sharing isn't going to be of real relevance to our urgency in this discussion, but it does allow you to share this assignment openly with other colleagues and create protections in terms of usage. The one that I find most helpful as I highlight these and try to give you some emphasis with these 2 arrows are the learning tools and feedback capabilities. The fact that you can take a question authored with videos and helpful hints and turn that off and use that very same question for testing purposes is quite powerful. That's where you will want to control what is made available to students either during the test or, for that matter, after the test has been marked due. There are ways to adjust points with deductions based on number of attempts to try to encourage students to get items submitted correctly on first attempt. There are ways to add bonuses for early completion and a whole variety of things in between those 2 items of the spectrum for automatic point adjustments. The rest of these deal with what I find advantageous for statistics and engineering number calculation problems where tolerances in Sig Fig tend to be widely used. I find it favorable with my engineering curriculum. And so then you can choose also to hide the naming of the question so that it's a little more difficult to see where the question came from under display syntax. So with all that said, let's just take a look at 2 of these up close to start with. Beyond the gradebook, I'll let you peek at that, but that's basically going to allow you to allocate the category for which you can make many of your own if you find that the categories WebAssign provides are not sufficient. So that's the gradebook. It's not necessary unless you choose to use the gradebook. The items that are of importance in this discussion, I think, are the submission and learning feedback tools. So as we look to here, you can see that the submission possibilities range from other, which gives you the flexibility to choose in between these quantities, but you get an idea of the possibilities. I've rarely seen students have a need go over 20, but there are been instances where it's been quite helpful in their practice attempts. So you can have homework assignments and practice assignments, and then parse out those that you want to establish a validation of their learning in forms of quizzes and tests. So you can choose the number of submissions. It would be a little odd to have a test with more than 2 submissions, but I'm going to show you that it can be changed. And then I tend to favor 2 submissions on a test over the years, where I first allowed only 1 to accommodate typos and these emails that will come in arguing that they should have gotten another chance. So the fact that they get it wrong on a typo, I allow them to recover the open-ended question for auto grading with a second attempt. This is not the case with true false or multiple choice. So I will go down below in the content area and choose to alter each question that is multiple choice or limited to just 1 submission where it's appropriate. And I include that in my instructions portion of the assignment to make sure students understand that only 2 submissions applies to open-ended numerical and algebraic questions that they are to be auto-graded on. You get some options here to grade the entire questions or parts or the whole assignment. I'm a big fan of using the grade questions as they're submitted. I prefer that because of the advantageous randomization capabilities that come with it. And I tend to take the student's best answer is what I've tended to favor over the years. I can see arguments for and against that. And as we go down the list here, you can see you can turn on required work. Keep in mind, these settings are for the whole assignment. This is the whole assignment. If you want to make blanket statement changes, this is the place to go, the whole assignment. Down below, we can alter individual questions that uniquely have a different setting need. So the bulk of your questions will inherit these settings. I tend to show my work off at the blanket overarching level of the assignment control. I leave it disabled and turn it on where I need to on a per question basis. Notice here also there's the randomization capability, and some of these are disabled. So you may want to turn these on, but they're contingent upon what you select above. That's why I tied these 2 together. So when you choose the question to be graded in its entirety, this option right here for submitting answers, notice that when we make this selection, it then enables the ability for you to try to change it up. Why would I do this? Is if you wanted to, you could actually change it after 1 submission, meaning the randomization. They tried it, got it wrong. If they want a second attempt at it, it could very well randomize to something different. And it could randomize to the same thing. So that's the nature of randomization. You may want to not show them the answer key in a testing situation, so those things might be unchecked, but that could add certainly a level of rigor. I tend to favor using this approach of randomization where everybody uses a different value on a testing situation, and I give them 2 attempts. So that seems to be the standard format that I use. And once I'm in this mode, then I tend to use their best score when it comes to their submission and point allocation. So these are my standard settings for test quizzes. I must say I have just now resorted to tests that are going to be timed to try to add rigor. The overwhelming move suddenly to so many students having to take materials online is prohibitive the use of test proctoring sites that I tend to favor and added rigor. I've proctored students online using Zoom, and I plan to visit that and do it with breakout rooms. And I have caught students cheating both online and in class where we have the test proctor site set up where I've gotten screenshots of their attempts to use outside resources. The difficulty is not knowing who's cheating and getting away with it. And so I have mechanisms for showing work. I've even elevated to where students have to submit videos where they show their photo ID. I use a tool called Flipgrid for students to submit their videos off their cell phones, and there's assumptions in that students have the technology. With this migration to remote work, where our university is not assuming everybody has that same technology, it's been rather precarious to try to address all student needs without additional cost. So that's where I would set the assignments, and I'm going to go down the list here in terms of showing the work feature. You have the tools. This is the other piece I wanted to highlight. I tend to not show any of the hints in the testing mode. I don't want them to see the hints, the videos, and I actually turn many of these off after the fact, where I encourage my students to meet with me or go over a session after the test collectively online or in person, where we review the test questions for the sake of gaining learning outcomes. And so these are options that I would tend to favor, depending on your preference of whether you show them the test after the due date or not. That said, you're just checking to see what you want. You want to give them feedback during the test. Some students don't like to see the red check, red X or the green check. Some do. And in the end, I've left it on. Most seem to appreciate knowing their feedback, even though it might add to their anxiety as they make progress through a test. You can hide a lot of this information if you so desire. At the bottom, though, as we move past many of those assignment settings, those few that I highlighted for testing purposes, we come to the content area of WebAssign. And it's here that I want to point out a very important need for you to consider. You may want to turn on the show per question settings as a new user. As you go down into this listing of questions, here are your questions that we've added from previous efforts. The show per question settings could give you a bit more insight to what's available, bonuses, submissions allowed. That's what I particularly am interested in. Learning tool feedback, all sorts of interesting things that you can turn on. It doesn't hurt to have all of them in plain sight while you're trying to author these assignments. So as we go through this, you'll notice the ability to change the submissions from the assignment default of 2. We can change this. So instead of having 2, we might have a multiple choice or a true-false question that we want to go in and choose to just have 1 submission where they're not going to guess their way to correctness. So the blanket overarching allowance of 2 submissions works for the open-ended questions, but a true-false question, if this were one, would only have 1 attempt or 1 submission. There are options here as well on a per question basis, which I also invoke. I choose to turn on not the default setting that was set by the assignment above. So if you recall, I had no show my work. I could choose to make this a required component. Oops, I need to click OK. A required component for students to show their work on this particular question. Or I might just have a question at the top of the assignment that they just submit all their work for the entire assignment that they did during the time period that I want them to complete this under. So if you don't like the required aspects, the optional one could be of interest to you. I've used the optional one to even assign partial credit points to students. So that's been advantageous when I had the need. But you'll notice the point designation. If you choose required, you get to choose how many points they'll get for that submission of work. I must say, by default, WebAssign chooses to give the students that 1 point when they click to submit their work. There's no way to read the submitted work and evaluate it for its correctness. You have to then go in and remove that 1 point if you feel it isn't warranted for the student to receive. There is a way to turn this off, and so that it does not, let me turn this off, does not give the student points. There are ways to choose the tool next to it to turn off, and this is documented in the help file. If you want to change the default to not give students a point initially for just submitting work, there is a way to change that using the penalty bonus category. There's a way to do that. I'll save for the help file. Another feature worth pointing out while we're here, one that I find advantageous, whether it's a test or a homework, is a hint. Maybe you've got a question that has a lot of curiosities and interpretations. You'd rather just address them at the time. If they miss 1 attempt, you can put in a personal hint and try to reinforce that. So there are ways for you to put videos here. I've put all sorts of stuff in this box, and just turn on the hint feature for a per question basis. So I can type in hint, and then I can just choose to turn it off after 1 submission. So when students submit it once, I can give them a little reminder. Maybe you need to enter your answer exactly, or maybe you need to consider an approximation of just 1 decimal place. I don't always do that, but I found some questions might need a little bit more of a support in terms of coming to the front of the room when I would proctor, and they would ask questions that I would share answers with the whole class. So there are ways to turn on hints on a per question basis inside of these features known as learning feedback tools. So you can really control the depth and detail of an assignment. In terms of actually showing the work, so let's take a look at how this plays out, because the other side of this is how do you grade this stuff? In terms of showing work, I have a specific assignment here that I want to share with you. And we'll go through this process of grading the actual work so you can see if it's worth your usage at this moment in time. If you go into the student view, we'll find an assignment that actually is designated as show work for my purposes, so I know where to go. It's not everything needs to have a show my work feature. What you're seeing here is a 4-question assignment. And as they scroll down through this list, you'll see the first question has what's known as the required show my work. It's blatant. It's going to be there as part of the problem that comes from your choice of content from the author. And in it, you're going to see the ability for the student to have an entry box so they can type in information here as they wish. There's a math tool that they can take advantage of. Over to the far right here, you can see that. And there's typical editing tools to add their math. I'm not such a proponent of that as much as getting my students to upload their files inside of this work and just say my files are uploaded. And that means they use their cell phones or some other camera device to snap pictures of their papers into PDF or other scanning utilities and attach this. So what I would recommend in testing purposes is you have an initial assignment where they go through a dry run of just uploading something that's not consequential, a basic assignment that sort of pre-checks their entry into the exam, and then put in a password on the exam, time it. I'll get to that in more details. And that way you'll have some assurance that they won't claim accidental uploads or issues. They have them confirm that they indeed can upload files of your choosing, PDFs, Word documents. You can even do Google Cloud and Microsoft OneNote shared documents, so they can embed the link right inside of this as a means. I use Microsoft Classroom with OneNote, so many of my works are submitted in OneNote in the cloud. Your responses can entail your own commentary, a series of default feedback files. Maybe you have an answer solution, you just upload it for every student as you go through their submitted works. You might have a standard video that you've created in terms of showing them, confirming the practices of concepts you want them to understand. So this is what I do. I typically give them video feedback in the solution or the comment period that they can just click on and then open up and go to that particular link with a right click, and they're able to see what I wanted them to have. Many times I use the same video for all students to ease the grading burden that can come from this, but so much auto grading is occurring that I do have time that I allocate when I have class sizes of 60 and 120 depending on the semester, where I carve out and I say, all right, I can grade one question for 120. That'll take me 2 hours with a minute apiece, and I have a routine of giving feedback and checking. It may take a little longer than that, but that gives me at least some idea of how much I'm going to allocate in terms of validating their learning. So when you go through this is the student view still, mind you. They're seeing the feedback. You can see the next question is optional show my work. This is what it looks like with optional show my work. They would have to expand and take advantage of uploading this. So it exists for the student to use, but they're not required to do it. You'll even see the designation here indicating that indeed it's optional for a student to use. Then a question without any work options. This is what it looks like without any show my work. You want to change your mind at the last minute and turn on that feature? You can. You can go in and turn on show my work. You can delete a question. Gets a little hectic with rescoring, but it can be done in WebAssign. You can add and delete questions and have students go back or rescore. A lot of flexibility in changing assignments on the fly. So that's really the show my work feature. I want to now go into how it looks on the instructor side with grading to finish this up. If you were to grade this show my work assignment, you must know which assignment has such a feature enabled, and you use the scores view. It's the scores link. That's where you go in to grade the show my work. If you want to grade this aspect of material coming in from students, you can go into the scores link and choose the grading option that I'm about to demonstrate. We click on the scores link. What we'll see is a feature known as grade answers. So as you notice over here to the side, the grade answers link allows us to go in. If I had a host of students, you would see all their names and their assignments. Here I just have one assignment, one student, myself. This is my instructor account with student access. It's a good way to practice things out and see how it behaves. Here you go. You can see how you can hide the student names for anonymity. You can just pinpoint specific questions if you wanted to. I'll show their names and hit start grading. So with the start grading menu pops up, you have the ability to see what I previewed just a moment ago. Notice I didn't submit when I was typing that, so it's lacking. But you have the ability to see what the student has garnered in terms of auto grading, what they've submitted over to the side, and then your ability to go back in and alter is still there. I can deduct points if I wanted to and say I found that they deserve more, 3 points, or I can go ahead and just do half a point and resave it, and I can choose to proliferate their inbox with a host of files if I wanted to upload them. So it's possible for me to go in, upload a demo file. Here I have a PDF, and I can upload that for the student to receive. I can hit save. And you can see now I've deducted points, I've added a file. And when the student goes back into this view now, if they were to come back another day or refresh their browser, you'll notice now in the student view, they've been penalized and they've got a file maybe that demonstrates why I did this, who knows. But that gives you the idea of how flexible this show my work grading feature is possible. I tend to grade questions on the screen. I use the Ink to Go tool, and I typically pull the student's question up. So when I look at their question, I'm actually recording myself, dumping it to YouTube and taking the link in very short order and giving pinpoint accuracy as to what feedback they need on a selective basis, on a set of questions that can help me manage my time and let much of the auto grading occur. That's what I choose to do in testing. And now, in terms of where all this content ends up, the grade book, the features that are likely to be helpful to your students, the grade book is really a good tool to consider. But for those of you in a hurry, needing help to set things up, there are other options. Scores are being collected. Anytime you want to go see how students across your class are doing on one assignment, you can use the scores view, any assignment. One assignment at a time, the scores view is a great way to go. If you want to see a bigger picture without setting up a grade book of how your students are performing across all assignments, you can choose to see that under the grades link. So at the top of the screen is the grades menu listing. Yes, gradebook is tempting. It's the first one on the list, but I've been migrating over these years to a tool lesser known, and I would argue much better suited for our time of crisis, known as the reports view. There are class scores. It's a favorite of mine. I believe I had a lot to do with that during a contest many years ago in 2012 where we were giving ideas. They took one of my ideas, and it's a spreadsheet type layout. Class analysis, real tempting. But I'm arguing that you go beyond that scores link I showed you for each assignment. Go to the reports view. If you go to the reports view, here's what you're going to see. The beauty of the reports view is it's really a whole dashboard of all your students, all students along the right-hand side of the screen here. So however many students you have listed on the side. So that's the students. And then the content of all the assignments, those are listed on the left-hand side. And I like the fact that it includes the category and the due dates. So, and I got access to view edit schedule. It's really a great page, in my opinion, in summarizing everything you might need. So if I want to see how a student is behaving or performing, what I can do in that area is I can click on their name, and all I do is I want to see how that student's doing across the entire course. I can choose analysis. In the analysis feature, it's going to take all of these assignments into consideration, all 70 of them. You can pick and choose if you just want to see a parsing of which assignments. Maybe you want to see how they're doing on chapter 9 or a group of assignments that are related. You can just check those for that one student and click analysis, and it'll aggregate just those selections. But what you're seeing on the screen here is a summary. So I can see both the raw scores and percentages is why I like this. I get many requests for faculty wanting to see, without setting up the grade book, the percentages in a massive compilation, aggregation of all assignments. You can see the percentages of each score in that initial view per assignment. But when you toggle this on a one student basis, you can see their percentages. It will actually show up, since you're only looking at one student. You'll be able to switch this over to percent, and those percentages would show up in this column since you're only looking at one student. You also get what's known as an item analysis. If you want to see how they are behaving, sorry, I switched to red there. Item analysis is what this summary link does. So you have a lot at your disposal. And if you want to, you can click right on the assignments to dig deeper into what the student was doing with their responses. So this 2-page summary of reports view, I find advantageous for those beginning to try to get one landing place in their WebAssign in terms of gathering their scores. I prefer this as a point of showing the students, showing the content, and notice it's much faster. If I wanted to see how the student did on diagnostics, I could just choose these items and click analysis, and we'll just see those 4 or 5 items with great haste than 70 at once. You can go back, run another report. You can select multiple names. This is really helpful if you're trying to determine if students are working together collectively or doing things that might compromise academic integrity. There are all kinds of selections here. That said, the scores view, so in review, There are the scores view on a per assignment basis. If you want to see how an assignment is going across all your students, just that one assignment, use the scores view. If you want to see how students are behaving and performing, I should say, use the reports option is my suggestion. You can certainly use anything you like, but that's sort of the efficient one-stop shop. Those of you wanting to venture a little further, I do this. I use a gradebook feature. In the gradebook, you do have to set this up. It requires you to create categories or use categories and allocate points or weightings based on those categories. In this process, you actually have a series of steps that you have to perform. If you have a gradebook already created and a colleague has one, you can actually import their gradebook. So you don't have to set this up. You have a departmental gradebook, you can share it with one another. So that's a possibility to share the gradebook. For this demonstration though, to go through the process of creating a gradebook, what you have are these choices of choosing whether you do a running average, is what this first setting is, or whether you do an absolute grade scale based on everything. And so I prefer the absolute grade scale, and I let my students calculate the running average as they complete assignments and the weightings of exams and other items come in. So the running average is really what they call past due assignments, and the absolute scale, which starts from 0% and builds up, meaning yes, it does start at F, is what I do with my students. It does add a little bit of anxiety, if not a lot, but I try to get them to understand the math is the lesson there. All assignments is the other option. You can change these gradebook settings anytime. Reconstructure, see how they're doing. I go in here after the semester and I change the weightings to see what that would have done to the grade distribution. So I play around with this gradebook quite a bit to see how the grades would alter doing different changes. You get to select your categories. If you find one is not available, you can add your own. And then the next step in this process is to choose how those categories are going to be weighted. So you can see I left them all selected. You can choose how the quiz category is 100% of their grade, or maybe it's just 10% of their grade, and then the final is going to be 90% of their grade. You can have a practice category. You can have a no credit category that's worth 0, and you just put assignments in there for the sake of practice. And so you can either choose a relative weighted percent like I'm doing, or you can choose a number of points. I've seen institutions set it out of 1,000 points as students accumulate and work their way to a final grade. So these are some of the options. I've made myself into a dilemma here. So these are the categories that I've chosen, just those 3 to actually use in the actual calculation. And then you get to choose how to weight these. So a few more selections, all of which, if you feel you make a mistake, can be changed after the fact. There's a dropping capability. Maybe I'll drop a couple of quizzes. I'll use that as an option. And then I can choose a letter grade. So 92 is an A+, 90 is an A. I'm just making this stuff up. And you can certainly create any grading scale if you want to give your students insight into their letter corresponding grade to the percentages that WebAssign will compute. You can give them a range of statistical information and feedback. I tend to clear all these nowadays. I tend not to show them anything more than their final score grade. That's really all I tend to share much anymore. And then when you click next, that'll summarize it into a single page for you to review. I tend not to worry about it because I know I can change it after the fact. I click on Save Settings, and now when you go into the gradebook, you'll see the gradebook with those update settings wizard links still there for changes you might want to make, but your gradebook now is starting to develop with this list of students that would populate along the left and their scores along the right. The beautiful thing about the gradebook is that you get these additional links at the top and bottom that really allow you to dig into the data analysis of how students are performing. On the student side, they too get a gradebook feature. So as I go in here to look at the student side of that course, the grades feature for students is just as advantageous to you and I as it is to our students. When you click on grades, you're able to go in and see those students. So there would be a box here that lets you change the student name and see how they are viewing their data. If I had many students in this account, this particular class, we would be able to see all of their performances. So that's where you really can get a summary of what's possible. So finally, how do you take all this information and export it? It turns out you can in the reports view. If you hadn't noticed, in the reports view, there's a few more links than just analysis. As you select their assignments, across students and activities, there is a downloads link that allows you to take these items offline. You can choose to download their responses, or you can just look at their scores alone, and you can put them in Excel formats, comma separated value formats, and choose to import them into LMS, gradebooks, or other sharing activities with your colleagues and departments if you need to archive the material that's collected in this report of scores and assignment activity. Now, another feature, if you're managing multiple sections of a course, is the download manager. So if you're into running many sections of a course for your department, the download manager is quite the capable tool. If you go in there, you'll notice I've got an example of where multiple sections exist. You can actually download the data across sections that you're not even teaching. They might be taught by other colleagues, and you can start to select those sections and then export the data based on your needs. Quite a few options there to see how students are progressing at a moment's notice if you happen to have access to those sections. As far as tips to promote academic honesty, I tend to precede my assignments with the expectation. There's research that Andy's going to go into in a minute that instills that quality. I also use timed exams, and I password protect. So that leads me to one final item before handing it off to Andy, and that is in the scheduler tool. Any assignment can be structured as a test for students to complete. And so as we go back to this listing of our course that we created, I can make this assignment called review. I can make this a test by going into this schedule link. So instead of scheduling it as a homework, I want to release and schedule this as a test or a quiz. Under the schedule link, I can go in and allow myself to choose a password, timing restrictions, as well as conditional release. Maybe the student doesn't even get access to this quiz unless they performed a certain threshold of percentage on previous assignments. I tend to use that quite well to get a better learning validation from my students, only putting them into test situations where it looks like they're likely to succeed. Now, that does stagger the due dates, and it does create a different pedagogical approach, but it's been quite successful in terms of getting students to learn the whole of math in my course versus sacrificing points and requisite knowledge that they might need later on. So under this scheduling tool, you have the ability to go into this item over to the far right where these restrictions of scheduling reside. We're interested in one item right here on the list called Edit Restrictions. And it's there that you can go in and choose to instill a password, as well as features such as timed assignments. So over to the far left of the screen here, let me zoom in just a bit to make that a bit easier to see. What you're seeing on the screen is password protection. We can type in any password you like, and we can hide it from their typing. I don't do that in this time of crisis. I'm looking at letting the students see their typed password so they can check for typos and get the right word. I typically use something simple as the course name. And the only reason I do that is I don't want students going into a timed exam accidentally and claiming they need more time because they might have perused it. They might have gone in to try to see what was on it. Yes, there's risk with colleagues. There is a concern over that. There's ways to randomize the test and pooling that we can go into in just a bit. And so that's one option I use is password protect, simple. So when they type it in, they intentionally went into that assignment. And then I use the timed assignment approach. In the timed assignment approach, I can give them a variety of times on the screen here. Let me zoom out just a bit more. And so in the selection here, what we can see here are options that are preset up to, looks like, what is that, 4 hours? And then you can choose other. So if you want to give some arbitrary set of minutes, you can certainly type that in. And for those needing accommodation, I have students that have that requirement, and so I can grant extra time and go into just specific students and bump them up an extra hour, half hour. You can do this on the fly, or you continually do it after multiple attempts. You can keep adding. I had a student just last night, her computer crashed. She gave me that blue screen of a Windows PC to validate at the time she was taking it, and clock in hand, she did her part to be thorough to show she wasn't trying to fake it, and indeed she deserved a little bit of extra time. It all worked out, thankfully, because of these features in WebAssign for students to keep working. So I recommend these two settings, password protection, as well as the timed aspects to add rigor to your students. The other piece to this is conditional release. If you want students only to gain access to this assignment, maybe you want them to have 80% or 100% on the assignment where they upload their work and they actually demonstrate. Maybe this assignment is the one that precedes the exam where they have to practice uploading their work. You want them to get it perfectly operational. And so you won't let them into this test using conditional release until they've performed adequately on the prior assignment. I want to revert back to just one thing before I hand this over to Andy, and that is the items with regards to assignments. If we were to go in, I failed to mention this, and it's so worth mentioning that when you're inside these assignments, setting up these questions, if you're trying to add academic honesty and you're wanting to ensure rigor, more importantly, and you're worried about academic honesty, it is possible to increase more than just the randomization inherent with many of the questions in WebAssign. You can go in and pull up questions in a way that are similar, I would argue, but still challenging for students who may choose to work together or may choose to work side by side. You can add questions to a pool, and what that does is it then creates 2 or 3 questions in addition to randomization that students are likely to experience. So over to the side here, what you're seeing on the screen is this pooling feature that you can select a couple of questions. You can then pull them up as you see here, and then you can pick 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3 or 3 out of 4. There's a lot of possibilities here. If you don't like the pooling, you can undo it so you're not stuck with these things. You can push questions out, but that can add an elevated level of rigor and uncertainty to students who might be choosing to work together somehow. You can also check log files to see if they happen to coincide the timing of their tests, add further evidence to what may be a need to proctor them online. So what I do is I offer options of proctoring online when I have suspicions and concerns where I can prove things were compromised. All right, so I believe I'm about done on these topics to transition over to this option of how to test online. So with that, I wanted to segue over to Andy, if I may, unless there's questions to be had, Jennifer.
Well, we are running a little bit over schedule.
Sorry.
It's okay. So what we're going to do, because what we were planning on doing was having Andy cover, taking a lot of what Mike just showed and put it in the context of when do you use these resources for the assignment, during the assignment, afterwards. What we're going to be doing in our blog post, we're posting a PDF to this that would have demonstrated all of that. And then Andy may be making a video that will also explain what he was going to be sharing here. We do know that communication with your students is critically important during this time. We want them to feel safe and confident and the fact that you're there for them. So why don't we transition into the communication phase of it, and then we'll post everything else up on the blog post. So back over to you, Mike.
All right, sorry, Andy.
Rest.
Yeah, sorry for that, Andy. Andy has some excellent slides that will be posted, as Jennifer pointed out, with some research-backed arguments as to why you might want to instill some of the practices that I highlighted to give you that idea of how these tools can really be of value to you. So there's a lot here that I encourage you to seek out, as you can see here cited and demonstrated in these set of slides for you to peruse. So with that, I'm going to march ahead to slide 34. There we go. It allowing us to create another ensemble of how to encourage student interaction topics with WebAssign. So this is going to focus on how I can use performance data that is available in the reports that I mentioned a moment ago, as well as the new feature that's been around for a few years now, several years, known as Class Insights. You might want to take advantage of that with your students to get insight to how they're performing or not. And then tools to enable students to get the help they need, such as Ask Your Teacher, and how and if you should use extensions in this time of support for your students to learn remotely. So with that said, I want to just advance a bit. The idea here in general is to communicate with your students regularly. I happen to use a cell phone that's used through Google Voice. I allow my students to text that cell phone number, albeit I'm on a computer. I don't like to see it on my cell phone, but it allows them to give a means of communication that's familiar to them. And so that has been a really helpful tool to meet them where they're at. I communicate regularly in the form of an email to document and paste things into the learning management system we use here at Ohio University. Blackboard, for example, and I allow them, to have that reference throughout the semester. I do try to strike a tone that is positive and supportive. It can be frustrating to get questions that seem obvious to the communications or redundant. I try to help support them where resources have been sent prior, to instill habits of checking their email, of looking to the resources before resorting to an inquiry in haste. And so those things are challenging to balance in this pressure-filled environment that we're currently in. The other piece to this, the expectations. I try to inform my students the windows of which I can respond. And I give them windows such as 24 hours on some assignments where there is a need for quick turnaround, and others I talk about the due dates relative to their submission and how I'll respond accordingly. So clearing those out initially, possibly putting them at the top of the instructions of the assignments. I've been incorporating assignments inside a WebAssign that are just informational. So as they go from one assignment to the next, they have a weekly update assignment. I call it week 5 updates in WebAssign, where they check the items I want them to confirm that they're using my resources, they're reading the book. I have them sign off on an academic integrity statement that they're abiding by each and every week. And I risk that they just nonchalantly click it, but it's structured in a way to challenge and have them truly engage in that. So be clear with your expectations with regards to what you hope to do. So that said, I'm going to switch over to the WebAssign environment once again to give us some insights into how to use the performance data. So there's a tool that we have known as Class Insights, and then of course all the data that's coming in from the scores view. There's a feature here in every course of WebAssign that allows you to take advantage during office hours. You can meet them online, or you can choose to do it through correspondence, where you gather their information and how they are performing. Before we go too far into Class Insights, there are other tools that are readily available. One coming from the communication link in WebAssign known as Ask Your Teacher. So as you go into the communication pieces of WebAssign, you'll be taken to a series of options that exist over to the far left of the screen. I use 2 out of the list that are available to you. I use the 2 primary ones that I focus on are extensions and Ask Your Teacher. Yes, there are announcements, forums, and private messages, but my focus is on just 2 items. Extensions appears to be under communications because the student is inquiring, wants to know if they can have more time. I think that's the logic used to place this extension item in this portion of WebAssign. The other is going to reside on a per question basis known as Ask Your Teacher. As students encounter difficulties, if the support resources through Watch It's and Read It links that are provided or your own hints aren't sufficient, they can choose to send in a submission using Ask Your Teacher. So let's take a look at where these reside in the student view. If we were to go into the student view inside the communication, the Watch It's and the extensions and the Ask Your Teacher items reside in any of the actual assignments. So as you go into an assignment, what you'll see is the ability to request an extension at the top of every assignment. So requesting an extension entails the student going through. If you choose to turn on one or the other or both, the student will have those at their ability, and they can choose automatic, manual. They can type in a requested date. Here you can see I want another week's worth of time to do this, and typically they don't give a lot of reasoning, but it's nice if they do, so you can justify it. But I allow a lot of automated assignment extensions for students with either deductions in some instances or just outright allowance to extend time, because I set my course up for performance at a certain level before they can progress on. And so that's really the assignment request extension that exists if you turn it on. We'll show that in just a minute. The other is your Ask Your Teacher link that exists in each and every question. So off to the far side is Ask Your Teacher link. And as students send those in, they can send them in for each question. So if they choose this link, it expands into this option for them to request information. And as I go about asking with great detail what I want my students, to send me in terms of information about what they're having difficulty with, it leaves them with an icon indicating that they've sent an item in for review, and that will change when my review has been supplied in reply. They can go to the next question. They can certainly ask Your Teacher for every question, and I've had students do that, and they can see help more here, that sort of thing is what you might get. and they can send in another request for that question. The benefit of this is that when you come back to your account, make sure I'm in the right class here, web demo. So let me make sure I'm in the right class here. As you come into this account looking for these messages to come in, you'll get two notifications. You'll get a notification inside of the messages tab. You can just go to communication. I tend to look for this indicator, the count. And as you make your way into the communication home, you'll see the breakdown as I submitted a manual request, I believe, and those two help requests from Ask Your Teacher. As you select on these items, you'll see these come in, and then you can choose to process or ignore them. So there's possibilities that you may have already addressed them somewhere else. If you click on them, you'll get a host of options to process these, move them to answer, ignore them, leave them for later. You can go back to your list as you wish. You can even see what the student had been doing on that assignment. So there's a great deal of quick links available to you if you want to view these assignments and see how they performed. That said, if you were to go to Ask Your Teacher, you'll see a little more detail than what we see in the extension box. Here we have an assignment, two requests actually, from a student Lafreniere here, and you can see they submitted help requests on both question number 1 and 2. So we're getting the detail of what the question was in full randomized form. So if you want to, you can choose to report this response back to the student. We can choose to reply rather detailed if we want, based on what they've done, and we can choose to send that back to them so that they would get some feedback as to how to go about answering that. All of these are going to be archived in Ask Your Teacher Answered section of this communication. If you wanted to, it's possible that you may have found, it's only happened a handful of times in my time of encountering questions, where the question looks like it might need a bit more tweaking in terms of its acceptance of answers. You have the option for that type of adjustment through report question error. So if you see something that doesn't look quite right, they encourage us to submit those. They'd rather be safe than sorry in terms of whether the question is functioning properly. Notice you get access to all the other resources the student will have, and if you want to dig deeper, you can. You can go right into the responses, see what they have done in other parts of the assignment, and then you can choose to add more help in terms of your response. I can paste in web links. I do that usually. I give them videos, websites, or other things I can paste in there. This is strictly text is what you're asked, limited to in terms of entering responses to Ask Your Teacher. When it goes back to the student certainly would go in another time or day, or when they submit a question, it refreshes their screen. You'll notice the icon changes to indicate that they've received a response from their teacher. They can click on that icon and they can see my rather helpful information to help them continue on that assignment. And then they can send another Ask Your Teacher. And we can go back and forth on that question as much as we'd like. The next question you can see too, it also reflects the icon that is associated with Ask Your Teacher. You can see the website. Students have learned, since there's no active hyperlinks, that they have to highlight, right-click, and then they can just go right to the website with most modern browsers. So that's worked out well for many of my students. In terms of setting this up, the communications for extensions and Ask Your Teacher. If you want to set these features up, here's the steps that I recommend. As you go to this, you have to select one of these 4 links. In this instance, I want to start by setting up the extensions available to my students in this course. Once you do this, every semester, it'll inherit these settings. So I don't do this very often. When you click on one of these, doesn't matter which one, you may notice that it highlights in this gray banner. As a result, you now have this settings link contextually set to extensions. That's what it takes to adjust the extensions capability of WebAssign. So now we can go in and click on the settings link, and everything you're viewing now is in the context of extensions. Since we highlighted one of these 2 links, you're now seeing the extension settings. You can disable it if you don't want to give them. You can be informed when extensions come in, which I don't do. I tend to process them mostly automatic, so I rarely see them. And certainly you would maybe want to enable them if you're here in the first place. The extensions can be allocated as a class default so that everything inherits whatever you set here. I'll do this in a minute. But you can also break up extensions based on categories you're using in your course. So you can have different extension policies for different types of assignments. Inside this window, what you may notice is the ability to have extensions let me try to zoom this out just a bit, that allow you to inherit the length of extension. So when they do get one, how long do you allow for? I've seen many faculty use just a simple 2-day or small period of time option, and then limit how many extensions they get. So that length of extension, how many requests can they have? You notice that my assignments might not have high stakes, so I give them a lot of ample opportunity to keep working and working to master the material. You can invoke a penalty of percent or points based on total or unearned. So there's a fair amount of options there. And the window itself could be rather narrow. So you might just give them a very limited amount of time to actually have access to this extension. And then you can give them an announcement that informs them what is at stake with this extension. So these are the settings. I tend to use this automatic manual. So once the periods of time that have expired, I can still allow manual exceptions to come in. You can choose one or the other or none at all. So there's other choices here that you can take advantage of. So once you set that, the extension settings are set. The other option is to set up your Ask Your Teacher settings. Inside of Ask Your Teacher, you have the ability again to go over here to the settings link. Now it takes on the context of Ask Your Teacher. You'll notice a dramatic shift in how much is available under this option. You're basically going to turn it on or turn it off. You have one extra option where I do choose this of noticing when they come in. I tend to prefer to want to know these are coming in as a slight notification in my email inbox. And that way I know to go to WebAssign, that is the requirement here, and look at the problem in the context of WebAssign, the submissions and answers, and then provide a response, either with video, ancillary handouts, PDFs, things of that nature. I typically keep in the cloud for referencing many students who ask questions. That's how you turn on Ask Your Teacher. If you don't like that feature or find it to be valuable or just don't simply want that route of communication, you can disable it, apply it, and then that will turn off that link. If we click on apply, what happens now when the student goes in the very next moment, that Ask Your Teacher link that's up at the top has disappeared. So in the student view, you see it goes away rather quickly when you decide to turn it off. Maybe turn it off for just a brief period of time. All right, so my recommendation and use of extensions, I've been moving around to due dates that are at the end of the semester. Otherwise, you're going to be facing in this class view requests that could come in from your students. So when I get requests from students, if they go beyond the auto extension, and in this time of crisis, this likely is to elevate, I look at the view of entering my class content based on two things. If one student is asking me for help in terms of their situation, I tend to go to the roster. I go find that one student, I dig into where they're at. I've been using reports view more and more, but that's where my old habits have emphasized. If I get many students asking for something related typically to one assignment or a couple assignments, I then go into that particular scores view. So that's where I trigger my decision tree logic and where I go. And in terms of the actual students, I go into the roster. You can find those students listed here. There'll be lists of them, of course, in a much larger class. And you can click right on their name. You can see what they're all about, where their emails are. But I just click right on their scores view. This will give me a summary of what they're doing in this class. And it's here you can scroll through and you can add extensions to any of these assignments. Now this gets a little bit painful if you try to go checking all of these. I never check these anymore. I scroll right to the bottom, and if I need to grant extensions, I just go in and turn them all on. You can ignore the ones, they'll stay the same. I go in here and I find the assignments that need extension. So I don't need to extend everything. I might give the student an extra hour or so. So I'll give them an extra minute just to be safe there. I'll give them an extra minute to 11:59. What I use in my approach to this is I actually copy all of the date, Control A, and I then copy it, and then I paste it in various forms where I want it. So there isn't a batch feature here, but this is the quick way to go about doing this. So I'm going to go in and I click in there, I Control A, I Control C, and then I go down and I just do Control A, paste, Control A, paste, Control A, paste, Control A, paste, jump around. I find the ones that need extension. So you can see the 59 is showing up in a few places. And then what happens is I just simply go down and hit save. All the other ones stay where they are. The changes I made will be confirmed. There you go. You can see the confirmation, the granted nature of those that I went in individually and pasted. That's my way of quickly trying to get through a student who has a mix of needs in terms of assignments. Sometimes I just go ahead and extend a bunch of them if there's some catastrophic event where they ended up in the hospital. And I think you're going to find that possibility if it's widespread. What I would do in a widespread situation where you want to give everybody the same extension of time, I would use the reschedule tool. If I actually put all my due dates to the end of the semester to avoid a lot of this going back and forth. But under the reschedule tool, you can go in and you can bump out these assignments. You see the current assignments, maybe all of them, I'm going to bump out by 1 day. You can add a day to their due dates. So I'm going to go ahead and bump them out by 1 day. And then this will paint down, instead of 428, they'll all end up with 429. And sure enough, I've got other issues because my course ends on 428 or 429. So when you run into this problem, as intentionally set up here for this demonstration, what you can do is you can leave this temporarily, right? You can go into this and you can keep bumping out your class, because I suspect we're going to run into this in some of our institutions. You can choose to bump your extension date out to another day or another week or another month. I bumped this out 10 years, not to promote that, but it's quite flexible and functional. You can save that extended date, and then you're able to go back in to that reschedule tool. Hold it, I didn't hit save. So I've got some other issues, but you'll be able to choose this extension date and allow for more extensions. So that's where I'm at the moment. I noticed on time, I've got to be careful here. Jennifer, any questions as I make my way back to the PowerPoints, I should assume? No?
Hi, Mike. Thank you. So first of all, thank you for all this amazing information that you've shared today. We do have one question in the Q&A we have not answered yet, and that is where or what type of pen are you using to write on your screen? Oh, you're on mute.
I use mostly my mouse, and what I would argue is get a mouse with a few buttons so you can use that magnifying feature and writing. So all I use is Ink to Go. I click a keystroke on my hand. I have my hand over on the left, and I use a certain keystroke to invoke it, and then I turn it off with the escape key. So I mostly write with a mouse. So you can use this on a Mac, a PC. Now, to your point, I do have a pen. I use a pen. I have a device that's touchscreen, and that allows me to get a little more fidelity for math and engineering problems. That gives a much better handling than what a mouse can provide. So I use a pen that came with my computer. There are new pens out there, not to push a particular brand, but this one I've found favor with over the years in reliability. I've been working on an iPad, helping colleagues. There's ways to screen share your iPad and use the iPad pencil. I've had success with that. I use Zoom to screen share. I don't use whiteboards. I just share my screen. And I use Ink to Go as a way to help my students learn the mathematics as we go through this online move to learning.
So thank you, Mike. So I do want to remind you, I'm going to steal this screen back.
Thank you.
Here. And I want to remind you about these websites. So, you know, we covered everything to do with WebAssign today. So there's a ton of information out there. For other general resources, remember that webinar I pointed out to that's hosted on the COVID-19 support events area. That does have a webinar that references a ton of resources out there, free resources for recording lectures and other ways to bring your course online. And as we all know, there's a ton of links out there on the web now that demonstrate all this. You guys are probably having more resources than you could possibly use at this point. So please let us know that we are here for you. Here's the community blog post. I posted in the blog several times in the chat, and also the COVID-19 support page. Anything else that you need, know that you can reach out to your Cengage representative. They're there for you. They want to help. It's an all team, all hands on deck here at Cengage. So people up and down, no matter what their job is doing what they can in order to help you, our faculty. You're our number one focus right now in order to help make sure you guys can make this transition. So just let us know what you need and reach out for any support. And that said, we're going to call it. I know we went a little long here. We appreciate you staying with us until this time. And we look forward to seeing you in the future, and best of luck and best health to everybody today. Thank you.